This is Subject to Approval, where we dive into the chaos, challenges and curveballs of today's business and agency world. No jargon, no waffle, just fast, fearless conversations about what's breaking and what's working in your business today.
Welcome back to Subject to Approval, the podcast where we deep dive into what it really takes to transform agencies and build high-performing teams. So I'm your host for today, Becca Maxwell, and I've spent more than 20 years in the agency world and then consulting for the last 8 years, helping leaders unlock the potential of their businesses, process, and people. And today I'm talking about a regularly recurring theme that comes up in my sessions, which is about how to motivate younger talent. And isn't it funny that it's always about how to motivate the younger team members? This question comes even from people in their 20s who I would consider young, but how can they better manage and motivate the next level below? Anyhow, I'm going to share insights from a book that completely changed how I think about this challenge. So the complaint that I hear from agency and account leaders is, a version of, these young people want rewards before they've done the work. They won't stay late when it's necessary. They'll leave for just a few more dollars to a competitor. Where's the loyalty? Where are the hard yards we all had to do? But the way I see it and the way I talk to them about it actually is that the problem isn't with our young people. It's more about the problem sits with how we think about motivation itself. So the brilliant book that I'm referring to is called Drive by Daniel H. Pink. The subtitle is The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. So let's start with the big revelation from Pink's research, and that is that we've got motivation completely backwards. For decades, we've operated on the assumption that people are primarily motivated by external rewards, money, bonuses, promotion, recognition, or to avoid punishments, redundancy, reduced hours, etc. So Pink calls this motivation 2.0, which is the carrot and stick approach. But looking through decades of behavioral science actually shows us that external rewards often backfire. They can actually decrease performance and creativity, especially for work that requires cognitive skills, which describes most of what we do in agencies. People only think they're motivated by money. That's what they'll ask for because that's the language we've taught them to speak. It's the obvious ask, right? It's the easy request. But if we can more effectively offer our people opportunities for mastery, autonomy, and purpose, Pink's 3 pillars of true motivation, they're unlikely to be looking elsewhere in the first place. So let's break it down into these 3 pillars. Mastery. So what I know for sure about agency talent is that we are lifelong learners. We are also optimists and extremely resilient. But often we focus on, tactical skill development rather than the deeper craft of relationship building and sometimes strategic thinking. Those tactical skills that we're embedding across agency teams, how to use your latest planning platform or meta dashboard, etc. Those might add credentials and capability, but they don't shift that person's self-perception of mastery. So instead, we need to create pathways for your team to develop genuine expertise. You're feeding that intrinsic motivation and that desire for lifelong learning. I worked with an agency MD in Malaysia, and she completely shifted her approach with her team. She spent years micromanaging client relationships, which is not the language she would use to describe it. But anyway, she thought she was supporting her teams. She thought by, staying really close to the client relationship, being in as many meetings as possible, being the lead of those relationships and in those meetings, she felt that she was offering her team mentorship through leadership by example. And she felt that she was protecting the client relationships from the pain of the high team turnover that was the reality in her agency. So over time, I was able to convince her to try another way. She began to empower her senior account leaders through more direct mentorship rather than that leadership by example. She's genuinely mentoring them and some intensive training programs. So she invested in their mastery. Look, a pushback I hear, especially in Asia, is that clients, the senior clients actually want relationships with the most senior person in the agency. And while that is typically true, they don't need to have the entire relationship held by the most senior person in the agency. So in effecting this move, the MD helped to build her team's confidence and their proactive thinking. Client satisfaction scores improved, which feels counterintuitive, but the reason they improved was because the team weren't just executing briefs or taking direction from her or the clients anymore. They were anticipating their client needs and they were proposing solutions. They became the trusted advisor that the client needed. There was no longer just one senior agency person holding the relationship. The senior account teams also were able to be that trusted advisor. So the team felt that their job was rewarding, because mastery isn't just about getting better at what you do. It's about the deep satisfaction that comes with progress, from feeling truly confident in your capabilities, from knowing that you are good at what you do. When people experience that, money becomes less compelling. So the second pillar is autonomy. And this is where a lot of agency leaders get nervous, even if they're willing to hand over some of the client relationship to their team. It's really hard to get them comfortable with autonomy. Autonomy doesn't mean letting people do whatever they want. It means giving them ownership over how they solve problems and achieve outcomes. One of my favorite initiatives to recommend in almost any business context is reverse mentorship. Reverse mentorship is a strategy where a less experienced, usually younger employee mentors a senior leader, reversing that traditional hierarchy. So it allows senior leaders to hear another perspective and gain some insights that they might not have even considered. Because sometimes your junior team members have insights and approaches that can revolutionize how you work, but they need the autonomy to think it through. They need the right environment to share those ideas and to be able to see them implemented. So when people feel trusted to make decisions and shape their work, they become invested in the outcomes, right? They stop watching the clock because they're not just following orders, they're solving problems that they themselves helped come up with the strategy for. So again, this is about making them feel more valued in doing the job that they're doing. So we've spoken about mastery, we've spoken about autonomy. The final pillar is purpose, which is perhaps the most challenging. It can be because it requires creative thought, but it's also the most powerful pillar. Because sure, we're helping brands grow. Sure, we're meeting revenue targets and profit targets, but connecting the daily work to meaningful impact, it actually requires intentional leadership and some creative thought. The most engaged teams I work with can articulate not just what they're doing, but why it matters. Why it matters to their client business, to the agency, and to their own professional growth. This isn't about creating some grand mission statement and putting it on the wall. They're great. This isn't the only solution, right? It's about helping people see the thread between their daily tasks and the bigger picture. And when someone understands that their media strategy isn't just about hitting reach targets, but about helping a family business expand into new markets and create jobs, that's when their work becomes more meaningful. Purpose answers that question, why should we care? And when people truly understand why they should care, they do. So again, these don't need to be big agency mission or purpose statements. I'm not expecting neon on a wall. What I love seeing actually is kind of micro purpose. I love seeing account teams proactively creating their own team culture and setting goals that feel meaningful for them. So a few examples of team purpose might be, we help our clients sleep better at night, which means as a team, they're focused on being genuine business partners who reduce client stress and uncertainty, not just executing campaigns. Another lovely team purpose would be, we're the agency that makes other agencies better. So this is a team that sees themselves as raising industry standards through the quality of their work, through their excellent client relationships, through their partnerships with vendors, and that they themselves want to inspire competitors to elevate their game too. Another example of a team purpose might be, we turn client challenges into growth opportunities. So this might be a team that reframes problems as catalysts for innovation, helping clients discover new audiences or test and learn opportunities. You get the idea. So how to apply these three pillars? First, thinking about mastery. Are you having enough conversations with your team to know what this could look like for them? Instead of just evaluating what people have done in a performance review, can you start asking them, what would mastery look like in your role? What skills do you want to develop? Who do you admire or aspire to be more like, either within the agency or within the industry, even outside of it, to get some inspiration? What skills or areas of expertise are you being drawn to, or do you need some help in getting some inspiration here? How can we create pathways for that growth? So then, trying to unravel what does mastery look like and putting a plan in place for that, then where can we give you more autonomy? Can junior team members lead client presentations or take a more active role in those meetings? Are you giving enough space for your account managers to offer solutions without judgment and even with the potential to fail? And third, can you make purpose explicit? In team meetings, can you have your teams not just review deliverables, but talk about impact? How did this campaign help the client? What did we learn? How does this contribute to our agency goals? What bigger purpose does your work serve, not just for the client, but for your individuals personally? So I've seen this transformation happen repeatedly. Agencies of high turnover and disengaged younger staff about to turn, I've certainly seen. So agencies with high turnover and disengaged younger staff turn that around. They now have teams that are invested, proactive, innovative, engaged, and actually advocates for the agency that they're working with. So what's great about this is that when you get it right, the money conversation completely changes. I'm not saying they're not going to ask for raises, but I am going to say it completely changes. It's not the single motivator anymore. They stop leaving for small salary increments because they're getting something more valuable. The satisfaction of meaningful work where they can grow, contribute, and make a real impact, that's very compelling. It's very hard to know that the next agency can offer that same experience for them. So it isn't worth the risk of a couple of $100 to make a change. So this idea of autonomy, mastery, purpose, it's not just a feel-good theory. This is practical leadership that can help you drive business results. If this discussion has woken something in you, then I invite you to turn it into action. Can you choose one person on your team and have a conversation with them about this? You can ask them to reflect on those 3 questions. What would further mastery look like in your role? How could we give you more autonomy? What bigger purpose do you feel your work serves? If they can articulate those 3 things and genuinely know what it is that they're working towards and feel rewarded in those areas, it's very powerful. So ask them to reflect on those questions. When they're ready to talk to you about it, really listen, because you might be surprised by what you discover. And obviously, if you want to dive deeper into the concepts, I highly recommend picking up Daniel H. Pink's Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. It will shift how you think about performance reviews, team structures, and even client service models. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. I'm always up for talking business books. I have lots and lots of favorites between Steve and I, and across the network of Artemis, we have some fantastic recommendations on business books. So please connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with us on LinkedIn, visit artemisapac.com to learn more about how we help agencies transform their teams and their business results, because agency success isn't an accident. Right? It's about unlocking the potential in your business, your processes, and your people. And sometimes that starts with understanding what really motivates us. So until next time, keep building those high-performing teams, and we would love to hear from you.
Work can be tough, but you don't have to figure it out alone. We're here to help for coaching, workshops, or just a smart second opinion. Let's talk. Contact hello@artemisapac.com. We're Artemis, and we get it.